Does this sound familiar? You have food in your fridge and your cupboards. You could probably make, definitely make dinner or whatever meal today. The problem is you don't. You either order takeout or making meal is very hard or you're exhausted or an exhausting process. You're not alone. It's it's far more common than you think. I've seen this on threads. I see a lot of people often talk about this problem of I have the ingredients, but I end up just order takeout. Or I have the ingredients, what do I do with them tonight? You know, I went grocery shopping, what do I then do with them tonight? By the end of this video, you're going to understand that it's not the groceries that's the problem. It's that we weren't taught how to do that. I'm not talking about a recipe, I'm talking about what it takes to go from groceries to meals in a way that doesn't get you stuck or unable to do that. You know what I mean? So you end up ordering takeout all the time. By the end of this video, you are going to learn that. You're also probably going to learn that either you weren't taught it, or if you were, it was taught in a way, it was forced on you, and then you're an adult now, so you kind of rebelling. Subconsciously, that might be what it is. But the point here is, you are not alone. And here are a couple, I'm going to share a couple of reasons why this might be the case. Number one, don't you try to go grocery shopping and cook on the same day. A lot of people can do that, but I know for a lot of other people, it takes so much effort to go grocery shopping, especially if you have to go multiple places. You go to the farmer's market here, then you go to the grocery store here, maybe you go to a wholesale there. That is physically exhausting. And at the end of a busy week, especially if you should grocery shop on the weekend, that's a lot. So when you go home now with all of these groceries and then have to unpack them, that's another effort. To then now go around and stand up around the stove and cook or put the meals together. I don't know about you, but separating grocery shopping days from meal making is a very important thing in this entire process. So that's the number one. That's the first thing. Trying to grocery shop and then cook a meal the same day. I don't care if it's dinner. It takes effort. And of course, I can suggest that, or you might even figure out that it's helpful to have a grocery shopping day plan. Meaning you either plan to, include ready-to-eat meals on that day, so maybe like buying a rotisserie chicken, or ordering from your favorite restaurant. Maybe this is the one day of the week that you give yourself the option to order takeout. But the point there is, grocery shopping and meal making happening on the same day can make the process exhausting. Process of meaning turning groceries into meals exhausting. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is connected to the first thing, it's a capacity issue. The capacity to the capacity is mismatched. So the capacity to turn your groceries into meals, they don't match. It doesn't match because you're physically tired. Choose any day of the week, not necessarily grocery shopping day. Choose any day of the week. You have a full life. You have a job. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you have responsibility to take care of parents. But the point is, you have a full life. And the capacity it takes to put a meal together at the end of any given day can often be very mismatched. You might be physically exhausted to then go and need to stand up in front of a stove. That's a barrier. And so, of course, you're not going to put the meals together. Of course, you're going to order takeout. That capacity is important, and not factoring that capacity is something that is costly. So It costs you in takeout, but also costs you not nourishing yourself the way you want, and cost you in having food eventually go to waste because you do that so often, or that happens so often. So that is the second thing, and they're all connected. And this is connected to the third thing, which is right. The third thing is you think that meal, whether it's dinner, let's use dinner for example, you think that meal has to look a particular way. So if you think dinner needs to only be freshly cooked, everything is made from scratch, that takes a lot. So when you don't have the capacity mentally or physically to then match that effort, of course you are going to not put a meal together. Because if you think a dinner has to be made from scratch, where you have to cook the potatoes from scratch, the rice needs to be cooked from scratch, the sauce needs to be made from scratch, you don't use nothing pre-made, everything has to be made from scratch, it is going to take a lot out of you. And when you don't have the capacity to meet that demand, yes, you are going to be exhausted, you're going to be frustrated, and you're eventually going to order takeout or maybe not eat, right? Depending on who you have in here, who you're catering to. Maybe it's just yourself, or maybe it's you have a family to take care of. And that in and of itself is very draining. You think the meal has to look one way, so you're stuck. You don't have any other options. Which brings me to the fourth reason that we end up in this situation. Because you think dinner has to be one way, or even if you don't, you have a limited exposure to what your options are outside of takeout. So you feel like, okay, so let's use cooking dinner from scratch. If you think that's your only option, when you have multiple ways of bringing a meal together. So you either think the method is static. So you either have access to one method. So maybe you think, okay, I can only cook in the oven. Or I can only use certain items. So the oven is the only way I know how to cook. Or I can only use fresh foods. I can't use prepackaged stuff, frozen stuff. It all has to be fresh. That limitation means you are going to always be stuck with not being able to transform your ingredients that you bought into a meal because you're tired, you're exhausted, you don't have the mental capacity, you don't have the energy, or maybe you're just not even in the mood, which is again an energy thing. So these four things are the things I've identified, or I've identified within myself, but also something within the scope of the work that I do, working with food and people around food, is why you can't turn your food into meals. It's why you open the fridge and say, I have no food, when you have a stocked fridge, but it requires you transforming those ingredients into meals. And part of this, I alluded to this earlier, goes back to what have you been taught about the meal making process. If you grew up in a household where it has to be fresh, made from scratch, and that's the barometer, or that's the measurement, or the standard that you're measuring all your meals against, when real life intrudes, you are going to fall short. When real life intrudes, you're going to beat yourself up for not being able to do that. Sure, you might cave and order takeout, but the point is it's not going to be a good experience for you. So recognizing that is important, but then opening up yourself to the possibilities. What options do I have? Aside from takeout, I can utilize different methods, easier methods. I can utilize, pre-cut foods, pre-packaged foods. I can utilize frozen foods, but also recognize that dinner doesn't have to be one thing. Dinner doesn't have to necessarily be salmon and rice and vegetables. It could be a sandwich. It could be a snack plate. an adult snack plate, something that's loaded with enough food that's going to keep you full. It doesn't have to be a cooked meal. It could be some crackers, it could be some cheese, it could be some meat, it could be some fruit, all of that. Dinner doesn't have to be all of these things. Dinner could be breakfast type food. So I hope you're seeing all of what I'm saying, that what you've been taught is to look at putting meals together to be one thing. You've not been taught how to take ingredients and turn them into meals, not from necessarily a recipe, not from a recipe standpoint, but from a process standpoint. Going grocery shopping doesn't happen the same day, or making meals or exhausted meals don't happen. It's okay if you don't make meals the typical way on the same day you go grocery shopping. It's okay when your mental capacity doesn't match the effort that's required to put a particular meal together the way you have it in your mind. You can change. Something else can be created. Something else can be put together. It doesn't have to look one way. You can open up your, I wouldn't say mindset, but expose yourself to the other ways to bring a meal to the table. So, and what's important is, how do you bring a meal together even when you change the method, even when you use something simpler? I always refer to what I call my basic bowl method, which is, if you're a visual person, this is even more important. What can I put together in a bowl that's going to be visually appealing that I can eat? And I can do that so long as I've got protein. Do I have a carb source? Do I have some vegetables / fiber? Do I have some healthy fats that I can add in to round out my meal, make it a little more balanced? And then do I have something yummy that's either flavorful or has a particular texture to enhance what I'm eating? Can I put that together? And if I can, you've got a meal. And that's the thing that's missing, right? So, of course you have food. Of course there's food at home. But can you build a meal? And that's the question you want to ask. Now that you know why dinner feels hard or exhausting, even though you have all the ingredients or you have the groceries, we're now going to talk about the one question you need to stop asking or no longer ask every time you open your fridge. And we'll do that when we come back tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.